Okay, so in today's video, I'm going to show you how to paint a magnolia flower in the translucent watercolor technique that I've been showing you the last couple weeks. I redrew it. It's on hot press paper. The paper that I use is Arches, and it's 140 pound, and I like the hot press better for this technique. It just goes on a little bit smoother, but if you only have the rough paper or the rough grain, don't worry about it. It's going to give it a little bit more texture. But if you have the hot press, I would recommend using that one. All right, so like I said, I already pre-drew it out. I've got my 3 brushes. I've got my black velvet paint brushes. I have 3 sizes here. I have a 10, an 8, and a 6. I'll let you know what size I'm using as I'm going along. And I also have my watercolors. Now, I usually dilute my watercolors in these little ceramic containers here. I got these at a thrift store. But if you have anything, a little dish, a little bowl, just go ahead and just start diluting some of the colors that you're going to be using. Because for this technique, it's got to go on very, very light at first. So the colors that I'm using are Permanent Rose and Hooker's Green. And then I'm going to pull in a little bit of my sepia later on as well. So I'm thinking those are just the 3 colors that I'm going to be using, but if I veer off and I use a different color, I will definitely let you know. All right, and and the paints that I'm using are Winsor Newton. I love my Winsor Newton colors, so I'm just going to be using those today. All right, so I'm going to take my kneaded eraser, and I'm just going to lighten up my lines a little bit. Now, you can Google any image of a magnolia flower. There's tons of images out there on the internet. And then this technique, since it's a really light and airy technique, I like to lighten up my pencil lines just a little bit so you don't see them through there as much. All right. So I'm going to use my size 10 at first. And I went ahead and I put a little bit of my Perm Rose already in here. I'm going to add a little bit more water. I want it to be diluted as much as possible. Here's my palette. I then go in with my Permanent Rose directly from the paint itself because the edges are going to be a little bit darker and a little bit crisper. So I've got 2 different consistencies of the paint here. They're both Permanent Rose. This one has a lot of water and this one's just straight out of the well. So that's how I'm going to be using both of them. All right. So I'm going to start with this petal up here. And as you're painting, you're not going to want to do each petal next to each other because then it'll just start bleeding into each other. You want to do every other petal and then blow dry it and then go in and do the one that's overlapping the 2. So I'm going to go in and I'm just going to start putting on my Permanent Rose. Again, very light, tons of water. And if you feel like you put down a little too much and you want to pick it up, just go over it with your clean brush and just mop it up a little bit. All right. And then I'm going to go over it with my Permanent Rose, but from the well. And I'm just going to go over and just lightly touch it here and there. And then it's actually, some of my petals are folded over as well. So I'm gonna paint those in too. All right, wash off your brush really well. And then just slowly work it in. If you feel like you've put too much paint on there, go ahead and just lift it off with your clean brush. Look how pretty that is. All right, so this is where one of my folds is, right there. Pick up some of that. Look how pretty that is. And then I'm gonna just go in and put a little bit of my pink back over here because this is where that fold is. So it's just kind of folded over this way. Very pretty. If you think it's bleeding too much, just go over it with a nice clean brush and pick up some of that water. All right, so now I'm not gonna do this petal. I'm gonna go on and do this petal. All right, so I have to kind of remember where my lines are because as the petals are overlapping, it does get a little confusing. So you have to kind of keep in mind where your petals were. So I think this one went up and down and I have a fold right there. Okay, so I'm just gonna go over it with my paint here. And I believe my petal came up this way and this way. All right, clean off your brush. Pick up some of that extra water. I like to have the middle of my petals a little bit lighter. If you want, this is another thing you can do. Instead of going in right away with the crisp paint, you can always go in with a little bit more of the diluted paint, but just more on the edges to give it a little bit more of a shadow. You can skip this step if you want to. Sometimes it's nice just to have this step as well. Go in with a clean brush, just pick up some of that extra water. And now I'm gonna go over it with my undiluted paint. Wherever you pick up your brush, it's gonna start pooling right where you pick up your brush. So if you want a lot of pooling, just go ahead and dab your brush right on there and it'll pool it really nicely. If you don't want that much, then just do a continuous line. And you don't have to do it everywhere. I also have a little fold in this petal. So I want to put that in as well. I'm going to clean off my brush really well and just blend it in. If you have to turn your page, definitely turn it. I'm going to pick up some of that water. I had a little bit too much water down here. Okay. And then this is the fold right in there. All right. And let's see, I'm going to skip this petal and now I will go on to this petal. And I think this one went like that. So go ahead and put in your color. All right, so I am going to do this one next. And this one comes in over this petal and over this petal. So I'm going to start at the tip and bring it in. Now you want, when you're going over your other petals, you want to try not to overbrush. Where you had done the crispness on the other petals, try not to overbrush it too much. Because you will take some of that away. You could always add it back in later, but. And I'm gonna go over it, just the edges here. And I've got another fold in my little petal right there too, so I'm gonna do that fold as well. All right, blend it in. And pick up your paint. And you don't have to go everywhere. You can have a broken up line so that there's a little push and pull with the line. You don't want it to look like it's outlined. Oh, actually, this one here comes this way. I forgot about that. And then there's a little fold right there. Okay. Wash off your brush. Now, I forgot to put a little bit on my on that petal right there. So we could just go in and fix that up a little bit. All right, and then go in and blend it. Take off some water. If there's too much water, take some of that off. All right, so I'm gonna go on and do this one next. And this one is coming kind of out at me, but then it goes to the right. And I think it overlaps this petal and a little bit of this one. Make sure there's not a lot of water on your paint. So after you pick up a lot, see how much paint is on my tip right there? Just go in and just kind of dab it off a little bit. You don't want too much water on your brush when you're doing the little edge. You don't want that much water on your brush. Okay, and I'll go on to this one. I think there's two more petals here. There's one here and one here. So I'll do this one first. All right, beautiful. What I'm gonna do now is I'm going to take my wash, and where my petals are overlapping, for instance, right here, this one and this one are overlapping here, I'm just gonna take my wash and just go over that little area where they're overlapping a little bit, just to kind of deepen up that section, just to give it a little more, a little darker, a little bit more depth. And I'm gonna do that for all the little sections that are overlapping. And then also where I folded over my edges, I'm just gonna deepen that up too. So this little petal was folded over right here at the top. And this one's folded over here. And I'm gonna go ahead before it dries, and I'm gonna crispen up that line a little bit. Right there. And I'm gonna go ahead and crispen up this one. Let's see, is it wet? Yeah. Pretty. All right, so I am going to, I think I'm gonna put in a couple little lines, not that many, but there might be some little, like little veining going on in the petals. So I'm just gonna take my wash, make sure I got enough water on there. And you can actually, you know what, maybe I'm gonna downsize to a size 8 for this. And then I'm gonna just put in a couple little really light veining. I don't even know if you can see that, but there's some veining going on in there in my petals. And I'm just going with the way the petal moves. It just adds a little extra dimension, a little extra detail. And it is really, really light. Wow. Just that extra little detail makes such a big difference. All right, I'm gonna start the middle of my flower. Now I was looking at some of the magnolias and they're kind of like a brown, some of them have some green, some of them have some yellow, and they're very like, I don't know, I don't wanna say stringy, but they're very fibrous. So I'm gonna go in with my sepia, and I've got my size 8 still here. And it's got this like very, a lot of line work. It almost looks like furry. And then there's this other little round part even on top of that. So it's like a circle, like a little sphere, and then another little sphere on top of that. So I'm just going in with some of my sepia, my size 8 brush. I want to leave some of that white still showing through, so I'm taking my time, just going around it. You'll have some lights and some darks. You can even go over this again once it dries. All right, step back and just look at it. I think it needs a little bit more down here. Sometimes when you're concentrating on one area, you lose sight of the rest of the painting. So sometimes you just have to step back, sit back, and look at the whole thing as a whole. All right, so that's that little part. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do another little part, but I think I'm gonna add a little bit of my my Hooker's green. But you know what? Yeah, I think I'm gonna just do a wash of it first. Wash off my brush. I'm just gonna do a little wash of my Hooker's green right up here. And then I'm gonna go over with some of the sepia again. But I just wanted a little bit of that Hooker's green there. I'm gonna take some of it off. I don't want it that dark. Just a clean brush, just wipe some of it off. All right, and I am actually, I'm gonna let that green dry for a second, but I'm gonna go over with just a clean brush and just get rid of some of my white. It just looks a little too stark, some of the white showing through that brown. So I'm just taking a little bit of water and I'm blending it out a little bit. You can bring some of that sepia up. So I'm just kind of putting a little shadow on that top part right there. All right, and let's let that dry. We're gonna go over and start doing our, let's do our little branch here. All right, so magnolias, it's a magnolia tree, so there's some little branches. There's gonna be a lot of greens and browns in here. I am going to, since you see through the petals, normally you wouldn't do this because the petals are on top of the branch, but since this is a really fun technique, nice and translucent, you're supposed to see through everything, we're actually gonna see the branch coming right through the petal. Just make sure your petals are nice and dry. And let's see, I've got a little wash of my color here as well. All right, and my branch kind of curves a little bit. So I want to come from the middle of my plant, because that's where it attaches. Right around in here, actually. And then I'm going to curve my branch like that. All right. Now I do want to put on another branch coming out this way because I have some leaves over here and I want them to be connected to a branch as well. So I think I'm going to bring it right through here. So then those branches will just connect right there. Pretty. All right, I'm gonna take a little bit of my sepia, not watered down, and I'm just going to tap it in, even around a little bit of that center. And then I'm gonna bring it to the branch a little bit. I'm gonna bring it all the way. All right, if you, this one too. If you feel like it was a little bit too dark, just go over it with your brush. And you can pick some of that back up. Okay. All right. Now our green should be dry. And I'm going to go over it with a little bit of the sepia again. Again, those little lines. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of greenery in here as well, a little bit of green. I'm just going to take my green wash and dab it in a little bit here and there. There. All right, and I might even pull in a little bit of green into my branch. There. All right, so now let's start our leaves. I'm gonna go back to my size 10, and since I erased this, I'm gonna show you where they are. I have one here, one here, one here, 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 and here. All right, so I'm gonna make sure I've got enough water in my little container here. So it's gonna be the same thing as the petals. We're gonna go over, make sure your petals are nice and dry first before you do this. And I'm gonna go in, and this leaf is attached to this little twig stem. So I'm gonna go in and put a nice little wash of my green. Keep in mind where your stem is. So my leaf will come right here. Now don't overwork it. You will start blending some of the pink back out. You can come in, dab in a little bit more, maybe on the outside here. All right, clean off your brush, dry it off, pick up some of that water, dab it off on your paper towel. Okay, and then I'm going to come in with my Hooker's green, and I'm just going to hit it on the edge. See how it's pooling here? Wherever I lift my brush, it's going to pool. If you don't want all that pooling, then just kind of keep your brush a nice straight line like that one. I want some pooling down here at the end. All right. Wash off your brush and smooth it out. Again, just be careful where you're going over the pink. All right. And if you want to deepen it up again and crispen up some of that line, I feel like I lost a little bit of that crispness over here. I'm just going to do it again, like that. And at this point, if you want to go ahead and put in some veining, you can. Your your leaf is still wet, so it is going to bleed out. And if you don't like it bleeding out like that, you can always go in when it dries and crispen it back up. And I'm going to crispen up my edge down here a little bit. I feel like I lost that a little bit. Right in there. Okay. Go ahead and pick some of it up if you want. All right, so that's one leaf. And now this leaf is connected to the stem right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my wash. Right there. You can bring it in on the edge here a little bit. Pick some of it up. All right, and then just come in. blend it out if you feel like it needs to be blended out in certain areas. And if you want to go ahead and do your veining, you can do that now. If you want your veining to be a little bit more crisp, then just wait until your leaf is completely dry. All right. And now this leaf here is connected down here. And you can put as many leaves as you want. Very pretty. All right, I'm gonna take a little bit more of my green wash and I'm just gonna go over my branch again. Pull in a little bit more green. And where they connect, I just want it to bleed a little bit. All right, let's go back up here. Actually, I'm gonna dry this. It's still pretty damp. I'm gonna dry it really quick. All right, so I am gonna move down to my size 6. I'm gonna pick up my sepia again. And I'm just gonna come in with some darker lines. Just put a little bit more detail in there. And I think I want to just deepen up in there as well, but I do want to add a little bit more green in here. Pick some of that back up. And then a little bit more of my sepia again. Just those little lines. There. That's really pretty. All right, I want to go ahead and crispen up a little bit of my stem here with my sepia. And my stem was wet already. Take a little bit of water, blend that out. Now your stem here, your branch, you can give it a little bit of texture if you want to. And actually, I want to do some green right up here to this stem. And you can add a little bit of green here and there if you want to. Just deepen it up a little bit. Blend it out. All right, I think I'm gonna add a little bit more detail to this leaf. I'm gonna go back to my size 8. And a little bit more wash. So if you think some of your leaves are still a little bit too light, just go over them again. I feel like some of these just turned out a little too light. They need a little bit more green. And gotta just put the vein back in here. I'm gonna deepen up the end of the leaf here a little bit. I feel like it just needed a little bit more green. Okay, so I think I need to go in and put a little bit more of my rose where the leaves are overlapping. So I'm going to take my size 8 and make a little bit more of my rose here. And where my leaves are overlapping, I'm just going to go in with a little bit more of that pink. Okay. Definitely here, I lost some of that pink. And that's okay. You can always go back in and put it in again. That is really pretty. All right, so I lost a little definition here because I got so dark in the middle that I'm going to go back over. You can do 3 things here. You can use your Jelly Roll white pen. You can use a Posca marker, or you can use your bleed proof white with a really thin brush. I'm going to see if this works over. Oh yeah. And I'm just doing little lines like that because I lost a little bit of that definition. So I'm just doing like little C curves from the middle out, just like that. And if you feel like you need to do just a couple more down here too, I'm just doing like squiggly little marks. I just feel like I lost a little bit of that definition. That is so pretty. All right, well, I can keep playing around with this, but I think I'm just gonna stop right there and I'm just gonna call it done. So if you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to this channel if you want more videos like this one, and leave a comment in the comment section and let me know what you think about these translucent flowers I've been doing lately. Have a great day. Bye.